Welcome to part one of starting your own seeds. Today we're going to look at the things that you need to start awesome seedlings. One of the first things that you need is you need a place to start your seedlings. So you can see behind me I've got my grow racks, and it's in an old dairy barn parlor, so we have heat and water. It's important that you have a warm place to start your seeds, as that's where they will thrive. Now, when we say warm, what do we mean? 65 to 75 degrees is optimal for a variety of plants to thrive in. So that's definitely what we want to look at. You also want to keep in mind that when you're growing plants, there will be water involved. And so you want to make sure that you're okay with there being some extra moisture wherever you're starting your plants. Another thing that plants need is light. And it's kind of important that we have the right lights. And as you can see here, we have a few different options for lights. The ones that I have on my grow racks are just fluorescent shop light, like a T8 shop light. You want to make sure that your bulbs are 5000K to 6500K, because that is the best color spectrum for seedlings to grow under. And you want to keep your lights between 4 and 8 inches above your little seedlings. We're going to talk a little bit more about some of what you need in lights. You can use LED lights. You don't have to buy any specific grow light lights, as they tend to be overpriced for what they do for starting seedlings. Now, if you're growing hydroponic lettuce or something year-round, then that's a different story. Another thing that you need when you're starting seeds is you need a soil medium. You need some containers to start your seeds in, and here are some of the container options that we have that we use, and here are some other options that are things that you could use. You know, I've seen people use things like these egg cartons here, or these peat strips. There are a lot of different trays with holes, trays without holes. There are inserts of all different kinds. You can see here we've got some big ones, we've got some small ones, we've got some really tiny ones. A lot of them fit in a tray, and they all have different purposes. When we're starting seeds, if we're starting like a bunch of lettuce, like hundreds and hundreds of lettuce plants, we will use these really tiny tray inserts with tiny cells, and we'll transplant those to bigger cells, and then we'll transplant them to the ground later. Or if we use these bigger ones, we may be using these for cucumbers, peppers, tomatoes, squash, anything like that that needs more room for the roots to grow in order for the seedling or the transplant to become of a good size. We need soil. As a note, I just want to say right off the bat, never ever use dirt. Always use a soilless potting mix, so something that's peat moss or coco coir based. I make my own. You can use something everybody knows of Miracle-Gro potting mix. That works very well. I do use that for the sets and transplants that I plan to sell. Environment is a place that you don't mind having some extra humidity, maybe a little moisture. You can do it in a house, like I said, if you lay some plastic down to keep the water from getting into the flooring. That's definitely the best thing. It does get a little dirty sometimes, so you'll want to make sure that you're in a place that you can clean up fairly easily as well. Before we get into starting seeds, I remembered something about lights that we hadn't talked about. How long do you leave your lights on? So you can leave them on 24 hours, although plants do like a little bit of off time from the light. So what I do with mine is I have some timers set up, and the timers run 16 hours a day on, 8 hours a day off. And I found that gives me the best growth, the best health of plants, doesn't let them stretch very much, and it still gives the plants a little break every day. Another thing to keep in mind is how high above your plants your lights are. One thing you want to do is, if you're using 3 lights wide like mine, you can keep your lights around 4 inches above your plants, and that seems to work very well. They don't get all stretched and lanky. That's the number one concern that I hear from people when they ask me, I started my own seeds this year, and why are my plants all getting super tall and then falling over and then they die? That's a strong indicator that there's not enough light for those plants. So you can definitely put some lights in. They're a long-term investment. I know I've had these ones in here for only 3 or 4 years, or no, it's been 5 years now. And I have a friend who farms and has been farming for many, many years, and he has lights from 20 years ago and they are still working well. Every couple of years, 2 to 5 years, you'll have to change out the bulbs because these fluorescent bulbs do kind of give up some of their output over time. But that's the most important things that you need to get starting seeds. So join me in the next portion now as we actually learn what we need to do to start those seeds.